I am going to declare, to make a statement on behalf of the Ecuadorian government. It's going to be divided in two parts. The first part will refer to what the Ecuadorian government said yesterday, that has to do with the threats that we have received from the UK about our embassy in London, and in the second place, a statement about the answer of Ecuador towards the security and the asylum request by Assange. In the first part of this statement, we want to strongly state the position of the Ecuador regarding this threat that the UK government did yesterday against our country. We cannot allow that this process and these friendly conversations with the UK related to the asylum of Julian Assange will be obstructed by an official communication that is aggressive towards the Ecuador. The relationship between the spokesmen in these two countries has been aggressive and improper. They refer to them being honest about their position in it, and the ambassador of the UK in Quito must be aware that there is a legal foundation in the UK that was in force in 1977 that would allow us to take action to arrest Julian Assange inside the Ecuadorian embassy. And there's a second part to this which is even stronger. Sincerely, we expect not to have to do this, but if you do not solve this problem in your facilities, this route will be open for us and we will proceed. So we are going to beat you hard and hit you hard, but if you behave, then maybe we will be softer and more lenient with you. This states openly their will to use any tools, governmental or others, and the use of force and violence to solve a situation and a relationship which had been previously friendly. In the Assange case, the UK has been we have been looking for a way to get to an agreement that will be satisfactory for all parts. The Ecuador is a sovereign country, and we have the right to freely make a decision about the request of a citizen that has filed this request to us, and we will decide freely on this. We want to remind also that among the preceding situations that have been stated in with intrusive actions in diplomatic facilities, there have been aggressions.
Recientemente, el 29 de noviembre del 2011. En este caso, el país afectado fue precisamente el Reino Unido. Y como sustento legal se aplicó, esta vez sí, la Convención de Viena sobre Relaciones Diplomáticas de 1961.
The Convention about Diplomatic Relationships in 61 states that there must be
y los locales diplomáticos que debe ser respetada
respectful and relationship between diplomats of the different countries. We have to mention also that the resolution of the UN, number 457, in December 1979, and others, from the crisis in the embassy of the United States, in the Vienna Convention was the legal tool to solve some of these contingencies regarding the situation of the diplomatic personnel in different countries. We cannot accept that the British authorities will raid the embassy there. No national law can be used in this way, in an intrusive way, in any diplomatic facilities in any place of the world. It shouldn't be used to threaten or blackmail the sovereignty of any other country. It's a situation that sets a very dangerous background in the world. The Ecuador requested immediately to the regional bodies, and they called a summit to try to deal with this threat and coordinate it at a regional level, and so that this fact does not go unpunished. Ecuador wants to thank political leaders, social activists, and many other supporters from many other countries that have stated their support to the Ecuadorian government. The answer of the UK government has not been satisfying because up to now we haven't received any apology, any rectification, or any denial about the information that has been released about the threats and the violence that might be used. Ecuador is a free democratic state that is not subjected to any external influence, independently from any foreign interests other than their own people's. In the same way, we are restating our position in the way of respect to international rights and for the dialogue among sovereign states to solve conflicts. This statement has to do with what happened yesterday, but only to read a part of this communication from November 29, 2011, about the raid on the embassy of the UK in Iraq, to the facilities of the embassy of the UK in Iraq. This communication was issued by the President of Security in the UN, and it went to his counterpart. This was issued by the president of this committee, and it says, the members of the committee, this was done so that the UK government doesn't see this. The members of this committee condemned the attacks of the UK. It has been an intrusion to the diplomatic facilities, and they have caused much harm. It has been a violation of fundamental rights and a violation of the diplomatic relationships and the Convention of 1976 of consular relationships. We have to take all of the necessary steps to protect any diplomatic facilities against any intrusion or harm that may be caused. In this context, and being very worried, we are calling the Iran authorities to protect diplomatic facilities and diplomatic personnel.
Con esto pasamos a hacer la declaración del gobierno de la República del Ecuador.
Now we are going to let you know about our decision about Assange's request for asylum. In July 2012, Julian Assange came to the Ecuadorian embassy in London requesting for diplomatic protection from the Ecuadorian government. He based his request on the threat and the fear that he is experiencing living here in the UK, and he was extradited to Sweden. The government of Ecuador has examined this request and evaluated all of the different aspects involved in this, especially the arguments presented by Assange, to back up his fear in this situation, what he perceives as a danger and a threat to his personal safety and his life and his freedom. It's important to say that Mr. Assange has requested asylum to Ecuador because he has been threatened and he has been charged with espionage and treason, and he fears, because he doesn't want to be delivered to the American authorities by the UK government. Because he says in that country he has published so much compromising information against the US government, so he really fears a lot having to go there and being extradited there. His actions, he was just doing his job when he was publishing all of this compromising information, and he was trying to unveil corruption and the abuse of human rights that has taken place. So the person who is requesting, he is requesting this asylum because of all the charges that he is being charged with. And it's supposed an imminent risk to him. And because he doesn't want to face a political persecution that will violate his rights and threaten his life and his freedom, so the Ecuadorian government has considered the following things. Julian Assange is a professional of international communications, and he has been struggling and fighting for freedom of speech. Mr. Assange has shared with the global public information, privileged documents and information that has affected countries, government officials, and many other people. The countries that issued this information want to proceed in ways that can harm not only his life, but his freedom and many other aspects of his life. The countries in which warranties have been required to protect Assange, and these countries have denied giving these securities to him. We think extradition of Mr. Assange is viable to a country outside of the European Union, guaranteeing his personal safety and integrity. If an extradition happens to the United States, Mr. Assange would not have a fair trial. He would be tried by military trials, military courts, and we think he will not be treated respectfully. He will be treated with disrespect and in a way in which his human rights will not be respected. Mr. Assange also has to respond to the investigation that has been started in Sweden. We know that the attitude of the Sweden government has been very tough, and they have kept him from exercising his full right to a fair defense. Ecuador has confirmed that Mr. Assange does not have the adequate protection that he should be getting from the state from which he holds citizenship. Then all of the diplomatic communications among different countries, we can tell that the U.S. government will not respect some of the agreements that have been made in this regard, and they have. And if Mr. Assange is put in preventive jail in Sweden, there would be a chain of events that would keep the proper decisions from being made to avoid a later extradition. These arguments are founding the fears of Mr. Assange of political persecution as a consequence of what he did and his fight to freedom of speech and freedom of press, and the unveiling of the abuse that many governments have incurred in many countries. It's a situation that is susceptible of putting his life at risk and his personal integrity. This fear has pushed him to request asylum to Ecuador and in the embassy in the UK. In the Ecuadorian constitution, the right to asylum is stated, and it's fully, the right to asylum and refuge is fully acknowledged. According to this constitutional law, people who are in a situation of asylum and refuge are granted special protection to ensure the full protection of their human rights. They also have legal assistance, health assistance, and many other social services. In the law, it is also stated what are the functions of different ministries regarding asylum. We should highlight that our country has hosted many people who have requested refuge or asylum, and we have respected the principle of not defamation, and we have respected fully the Statute of Refugees. Most of them are Colombian that have left Colombia because of the armed conflict there. The UN has apprised Ecuador's policy in this regard. We have not put these people in refugee camps. They have been integrated into society with the full use and enjoyment of the rights as human beings. And with all of the other rights and duties that are related to asylum and to being in this situation. This should be universal and should be protected for the whole community. And this should be recognized by all the states. And this should be the following. Asylum, in all of the different modalities, is a human privilege that is fundamental, and it generates obligations and rights, and it should be enforced in all the states. Diplomatic asylum or refuge, and the right to not being extradited or displaced, etc., are irreplaceable rights because they are based on the foundation of human protection. And there should be no distinction due to race, color, sex, language, religion, belief, opinion, political opinion, or of any other kind. Fortune, wealth, place of birth, or any other criteria. Protection happens when the state that grants asylum considers that there is a risk or a fear for that person to be a victim of political persecution, death, or whatever other kind of punishment. The country that receives the person should assess the request and based on that make a decision. Asylum is a fundamental right and it belongs to the set of rules that should be recognized at an international level.
siendo nulos los tratados o disposiciones del derecho
And it
internacional que se les oponga.
overrides any other local regulations that oppose to this.
La legislación interna de los estados no puede alegarse.
No local government or no local law can be used to deny the right to asylum to any person. Ecuador considers that in this case, the asylum should follow and is constituted by all of the different principles that we have mentioned and that are stated in all of the different tools for the respect of human rights. It protects the possibility to look for, receive, and enjoy asylum. The right to asylum and the rights of refugees should be recognized, and there's a right not to be extradited or expelled from any country. The conditions that regulate the right to extradition and the protection to not be extradited are there. It's surprising that there are all of these many tools protecting this kind of situation. People who have been in this situation have expressed their desire to state a body that will coordinate this work and that will give an imperative, fundamental sense to these rights or to these regulations. Some of these tools are the following: the Bill of the United Nations, the Bill of Human Rights, the American Bill of the Rights of Men, the Convention on Refugees in 1951 and the New York Protocol in 1967, the Convention on Diplomatic Asylum in 1954, the Convention on Territory, the European Agreement on Extradition, the Vienna Convention on the treaties in 1969, the regulations and principles of international rights that override any other rule or treaty that opposes this. Every treaty that exists that is conflicted with this will be overridden by Article 64. And the Convention authorizes the states to comply to the International Court of Justice, accepting the decision of the court. Also, the American Convention on Human Rights in 1969, the European Covenant for Fighting Terrorism, that says the state can deny extradition when the person is at risk of being pursued or punished because of their political opinions. Another, the African Bill on the Rights of Human Beings, and another bill on fundamental rights by the European Union in the year 2000. The government of Ecuador wants to highlight that the rules stated in these tools are above any internal or local regulations, based on intangible rights and values against unilateral attitudes of the states. This should strengthen international politics. On the other hand, Mr. Assange also requested asylum to Ecuador, and he has, which is a country that has kept a very good dialogue and relationship with Sweden and with the UK as well up until now. The warranties for Assange, after the trial and the legal process that started in Sweden, some of these guarantees have been, once, that he is not extradited to a third country. This is the guarantee that a figure of specialty will not be applied. The UK never showed a willingness to reach an agreement. They have requested to the Swedish government that Ecuador made it clear for Sweden that we wanted to have an interview with them, and we didn't want to be an obstacle in the legal process that started there. We don't want to interfere in whatever is happening there. Sweden didn't accept our proposal. Ecuador requested some guarantees from Sweden so that he wouldn't be extradited to the United States. And they rejected any commitment in this sense. If there would be a legal process, if there is a legal process developing against Julian Assange and the founders of WikiLeaks. Two, in the case this is true, what kind of declaration and in what conditions would these people be subjected to? Three, if there is an intention of requesting extradition to the United States. The answer of the United States was that they cannot give any information about the Assange case, saying that this is a bilateral issue between Ecuador and the U.S. The Ecuadorian government is defending its right to protect Assange, and we have decided to grant political asylum to him. To citizen Julian Assange, based on the request that was presented to the President of the Republic through a written document from London in June 2012, for which the Ecuadorian government has assessed Assange's situation and we can state that there is a risk that he can be persecuted politically and that he is fearing with a reason for it. So the UK government should respect the decision of the Ecuadorian government, and we trust that the UK will offer the necessary guarantees so that both governments can act adequately and properly, respecting the international rights and the rights of asylum. We also trust that the excellent relationship that we have between the two countries will continue to be so and will remain intact, based on the same principles and values that we have shared about democracy, peace, life quality, that are only possible if we respect the fundamental rights of everybody. Asylum request by Assange. In the first part of this statement, we want to strongly state the position of the Ecuador regarding this threat that the UK government did yesterday against our country. We cannot allow that this process and these friendly conversations with the UK related to the asylum of Julian Assange will be obstructed by an official communication that is aggressive towards the Ecuador. The will to use any tools, governmental or others, and the use of force and violence to solve a situation and a relationship which had been previously friendly. In the Assange case, the UK we have been looking for a way to get to an agreement that will be satisfactory for all parts. The Ecuador is a sovereign country, and we have the right to freely make a decision about the side, the Ecuadorian embassy. And there's a second part to this, which is even stronger. Sincerely, we expect not to have to do this, but if you do not solve this problem in your facilities, this route will be open for us, and we will proceed. So we are going to beat you hard and hit you hard, but if you behave, then maybe we will be softer and more lenient with you. This states openly their relationship between the spokesmen in these two countries has been aggressive and improper. They refer to them being honest about their position in it, and the ambassador of the UK in Quito must be aware that there is a legal foundation in the UK that was in force in 1977 that would allow us to take action to arrest Julian Assange. I am going to declare, to make a statement on behalf of the Ecuadorian government. It's going to be divided in two parts. The first part will refer to what the Ecuadorian government said yesterday, that has to do with the threats that we have received from the UK about our embassy in London. And in the second place, a statement about the answer of Ecuador towards the security and the asylum